Hello again. The Public Enterprises Department and SAA management have been criticized for failing to provide full details of the deal with the Takatso consortium. The consortium has been picked as a strategic equity partner to take a 51% stake in SAA. SAA management was providing Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, that's Scopa for short, with progress updates, and that took place a little bit earlier. Now let's get some reaction and analysis. I'm joined by independent analyst Khaya Sithole. Khaya, good afternoon. Welcome to today, and thank you very much for your time. Not much details coming out, I understand, from the briefing by the Public Enterprises Minister and his department and the SAA people in terms of this new deal that includes Takatso in Parliament today. The minister saying there's no secrecy, but the discussions are at a sensitive stage, and it's a highly competitive environment, the airlines industry, and there's not much more that they can reveal at this stage. Is that good enough?
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your viewers. No, it is completely unacceptable. This deal has been in the pipeline for the better part of the past 18 months, and its genesis was that once the government had decided that after the business rescue process, SAA needed to survive in one form or another, they then took the decision that they needed a strategic equity partner to be part of this. The problem started from that point in time, in that the process leading up to the selection of Takatso Consortium as the preferred equity partner was not very clear. It was not as transparent as people would have expected it to be. And at that point in time, when the announcement was made, it was quite clear that Takatso still had to do a due diligence. In other words, they actually had to go and dig deep and find out exactly what it is that they had signed up for. Over the past 18 months, obviously, that's where the problem seemed to have emerged, where suddenly it's clear that once Takatso found out exactly what was the issue, what were the issues at SAA, they were very clear that they were not going to be responsible for historical liabilities, which is an amount estimated at around 3.5 billion rand. And that seems to have been the great glitch, in that obviously, if they are not responsible for that, it means that we as taxpayers must be responsible for it. So you would have seen in the budget speech a few weeks ago, then there would have been an expectation that we are going to get some direction on whether the state is going to put up the 3.5 billion or not. And the fact that the Minister of Finance was completely silent on it simply indicates that it's still an unresolved issue. So that for me is a big glitch that we're facing now, but it is unacceptable for the department to simply say we can't tell you anything because it's been far too long.
What you've just said would sort of support the view that Gideon Novick, who resigned from the consortium just the other day, was citing concerns about the ability to raise the money needed for the deal. So it looks like there's no money.
Yes, so there are two tranches of cash that are expected. There is a 3.5 billion rand that I just referred to, but then there's also a separate amount, which is 3 billion rand, which is what Takatso was supposed to have come up with in order to kickstart the operations. Bear in mind, that is what we were told 18 months ago. Surprisingly, in spite of the fact that that still hasn't been finalized, SAA did indeed take to the skies. And since then, no one has been able to figure out exactly how SAA is being financed in its current form, whilst this deal is pending, whilst this deal is not finalized yet. Gideon's resignation yesterday was also problematic in that, according to him, it was the information asymmetry that was the deal breaker for him. He is, let's face it, or he was at least announced as the CEO of the entire consortium. And then he was a director, and he is now arguing that information was not provided to him. It seems the basis for denying him access to information is the belated realization by the consortium that actually this is the same man who has an interest in another airline, which is Lyft, which they now feel that on the basis that it could be a competitor to SAA, it means that they can't share information with him. All of that is obviously absolute nonsense, because his conflicts would have been known from day one. So it is inconceivable that an institution like Takatso and Harith in particular, who've got very deep experience in putting together high-level deals of this nature, would suddenly be unaware that particular conflicts of interest are either fatal or not. So the idea that they only discovered this week or recently that his conflicts of interest are a problem is the type of nonsense we should be dismissing outright.
Yeah, because, I mean, despite the words of Minister Pravin Gordhan to say there's no secrecy, there is like no transparency at all. I mean, and this is a public entity, SAA, as you said. We don't know how it's currently being funded. And to hide behind a closed process type of rationale just raises more questions than answers.
Well, I mean, it's very simple. We have to say it explicitly. The minister is lying when he says there's no secrecy. There is a lot of secrecy underpinning this deal. And of course, in any deal where negotiations are being done, there are some aspects of it that you wouldn't want to communicate so that your competitors do not get the big idea about what it is that you're planning. It will obviously be problematic while you are still in the planning phase, because if you then tell people that you feel that there's a commercial opportunity in a particular route, somebody who's already operating may just, get onto that route first. So there are clearly some commercial matters that you wouldn't want your competitors to know. But what has happened here is that we've been subjected to a blanket, a secrecy regime where the minister firstly cannot explain how it is that RMB's recommendations on who or shouldn't be a strategic equity partner were then essentially ignored by the ministry. The ministry still hasn't explained how it came to the conclusion that Takatso would be the ones that needed to put up this particular partnership. So all of these things reflect a profound lack of honesty, if you can call it that, or a lack of candor on the part of the minister, in that there are clearly processes that you can update the country on. You can tell us how far 18 months down the line you've gone through the competition approvals process. You can tell us 18 months down the line whether Takatso has raised the 3 billion rand that they said they're going to raise, and you can tell us whether the Treasury has decided on what to do with the 3.5 billion rand hole. All of those are information that would not actually affect the commercial sensitivities or the commercial, rationale underpinning the SAA deal. So the minister is being ridiculously dishonest, but this is something you've come to expect in relation to this particular deal. And you would have hoped that the accountability mechanisms that are supposed to hold him accountable would have intervened and said, Minister, 18 months down the line, we have to call you out. You're actually talking nonsense. You need to tell us what's going on.
18 months out, you should be able to answer some of those tough questions and clarify where the snags are, if there are any. In your view, Khaya, the minister says the Takatso deal is still alive, but where does this leave things? The situation we are picking up now in terms of what was said in Parliament to Scopa today and the lack of transparency, where does this leave things now for SAA?
Well, it's very clear. The deal has to remain alive in the minister's view, because he has obviously bet a lot of political capital on the fact that he can get it right in putting together a strategic equity partnership. The ANC government is not in the habit of getting into these partnerships. In fact, this deal with SAA should have been conceptualized many years ago, based on what the SAA structure and the SA business model demanded at particular points in time, where it desperately needed a proper partnership with a large international airline. That was rejected on the basis that the ANC doesn't believe in it. The minister then put up his hand and said, well, I'm going to put this deal in relation to SAA and I'm going to get it right. He then obviously made the fatal mistake of then nailing his flag to the mast of Takatso and saying that these are the people that I've decided must be the ones that you go ahead with. The fact that this deal is obviously now reaching a snag where there's clearly they haven't been able to reach a meeting of the minds in the times that we would have expected them to reach, means that he now has to deal with the question of, well, if he abandons this deal at this particular point in time, there's going to be a political fallout to say, well, for the past 18 months, you've been telling us that these are the people that can get this over the line. Why have you not been able to do it? So the minister will resist until the very last instance in actually making a call and say, perhaps this was the wrong partner that we chose. So that's the stalemate that we find here now. His political clout and his political capital rests on this deal being a success, in spite of the economic fundamentals and National Treasury's resistance indicating otherwise.